Hey there, I'm Tony Delgado. While I was working on my podcast regarding how to deal with loved ones suffering from video game addiction, something occurred to me. That something was my recollection that not everyone may take the concept of video game addiction seriously. And to a degree, I understand that concern. I mean, how can you get addicted to something that doesn't actually have addictive properties, such as, say, heroin? The idea of it might seem laughable to some. On that point, however, I would have to disagree. Some people are not aware that addictions enforced by chemicals that form physical dependencies are not the sole type of addiction. Mental dependencies can be formed in regards to many activities such as gambling, sex, or, yes, even video gaming. Addictions to chemicals which cause an addictive response in your body are categorized as substance addiction. On the other hand, addiction to activities such as the ones listed are called process addiction. The only major difference is, according to Dr. Carol Manser, that being addicted to a physical drug carries the additional harm of the direct effects of the drug itself, in addition to the changes in the brain that happen with both types of addiction. Some examples of these changes are shown here. The bottom row of images are from selections of measured brain activity from normal, healthy brains. The top row is those same selections of activity measured from the brains of people addicted to, in order, cocaine, alcohol, food, and tobacco. You should notice that the top row seems to display a lesser level of activity than that from the normal brains. It should be noted that, interestingly, obesity is listed in the categories. While obesity can be mostly due to genetic factors, it can also, of course, be caused due to an adverse addiction to eating. It is unclear whether it would qualify as substance or process addiction, but that's a different discussion entirely. More to the point, the problem is, as with many process addictions, people do not expect these activities to cause a response of addiction in the brain, because we are mainly conditioned to associate addiction with drugs. As such, the DARE approach of just say no does not quite work when it comes to process addiction. This is simply because, in most cases of process addiction, the addicting activities may seem like things that are okay with moderation, or even entirely innocuous. With that mind frame, you begin gambling, or hooking up with people, or gaming, and in most cases it doesn't become problematic. The point that it does become an issue is once one's partaking in an activity reaches certain criteria that establish it as an addiction, namely that the addict displays, according to a report published in the academic journal Alcohol Research and Health, a cluster of cognitive, behavioral, and physiological symptoms indicating that the individual continues use of the substance despite significant substance-related problems. With this in mind, let's examine how gaming addiction can fall under these criteria. Cognitive problems are issues with the way you think. For example, trying to take on real-world situations with logic that generally only works in video games. An example of this is the often brought-up claim that playing violent video games will cause the players to commit violent acts. While I do not quite support that particular stance, there has been a study I have reviewed in which a possible link was found between extensive violent gaming and lowered empathic concern for other people. Behavioral problems are just what you'd think, problematic shifts in the behavior of a person. The most obvious example that would come to mind is seclusion from the outside world in favor of spending overt amounts of time gaming instead. To continue following these criteria, spending undue amounts of time gaming can put you at risk of physiological, or more simply, physical problems as well. Possibly the most well-known example of this is carpal tunnel syndrome, which is believed to be caused by overly repeated hand and wrist motions that place strain on the median nerve, colloquially referred to as the carpal tunnel. An article on the subject in Nursing Times notes that the movements may be related to typing or using certain tools. In regards to video gaming, computer gaming generally involves a lot of keyboard use, and certain consoles such as the Nintendo Wii have control schemes that may involve a high amount of wrist movement. Of course, this is only a small cross-section of the possible effects of too much gaming. As such, an overt amount of game playing certainly may cause the aforementioned cognitive, behavioral, and physiological symptoms of gamers, yet even so, they continue their gaming. So why is this? If the symptoms are apparent, why not just stop? This is the very nature of addiction. Even encountering obvious signs of negative influence from their activities, these pathological gamers find themselves drawn into their habits again and again with seemingly no control. For this reason, I believe gaming addiction is in fact an actual existing issue, and not a mere fabrication or justification of excessive gaming for others to dismiss. Of course, even if you are convinced of this now, the question remains, why is this important? Okay, so game addiction is a legitimate concept. So what? Now that this has been established, consider how many people game on a very regular basis. Consider whether you notice any particular changes in their behavior over time and whether these changes could be signs of addiction. And consider the fact that if they have encountered drastic changes, it may not be as simple as just a phase. Addiction is a serious issue no matter what the venue of addiction is, so we must all be able to recognize when someone really does need help instead of just brushing them off. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is again Tony Delgado signing off.